Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hi, I'm Becky Parker Geist. I am the CEO of Pro Audio Voices, offering audiobook production, distribution, and marketing. I'm also the president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the host of the Audiobook Connection podcast. Today we're going to talk about what am I paying for in terms of audiobook production team. So many times as we're heading into the audiobook production process, for those who are new to that, there's not a lot of clarity around what it is that it costs and why it costs what it does. So we're going to dive into that today. So when you have a professional audiobook created for you, and I want to emphasize the word professional here because that's what we're going to be focused on. Why does it need to be professional? Let's address that first. There are thousands and thousands of audiobook titles available, and it is really, really important to have your audiobook be of a professional quality. Because if it is not, there's hardly any point in making it in the first place. Just bypass the expense if you're going to just try to knock it out, rough it out, make it good enough. That's not really going to fly because there is a tremendous amount of competition with really great professional audiobooks. So it's really important that your audiobook be of professional quality. Now, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that authors can't narrate their own audiobooks. Sometimes authors have the skills requisite to be able to do that. More often than not, those are skills that they haven't yet developed in their lives. And so more often, I would tend to steer an author away from the path of author narrated. It not only typically takes a lot more time, but it also most often will end up with an end product that is not as optimal, not as great as it could be if we're using someone who is already an expert in the skills that are needed for recording an audiobook. Another reason to really care about having a professional quality audiobook is that most often, audiobooks, like when customers are choosing what's going to be the next audiobook that I listen to, the biggest reason why most people will choose the next title that they do is because it was recommended by word of mouth. So you want a quality of audiobook that is going to lend itself to being recommended by whoever just listened to it. So those are a couple reasons why we're leaning into that professional quality audiobook. So when you get to the creation of the audiobook, if this is a new arena for you, you may not be aware of what it takes. And so we're going to talk about that now. The piece that usually people think about, the team player, is the narrator. So you're going to want a narrator who not only has the skills, but also has developed those skills for audiobook narration. And those skills are different from the other kinds of voiceover. There are many kinds of voiceover, including things like commercials, which have a very different flavor, a different style, and require a different set of skills. So you're going to be wanting an audiobook narrator, somebody who is used to this long form, this consistency, the ability to retain the energy that it takes to record an audiobook in the big picture, across the entire time that it's going to take to narrate it. Most often, a professional narrator will have already put in money and many hours in their training to develop these skills. And the time, even once they've already put in all of that and they've built up their experience level and working on other projects typically, and even so, most often it's going to take somewhere between 2 to 4 times the finished length of the audiobook for them to record the work in the first place. So that is one thing. So think about, not only have they spent the time and money to be doing the training to develop their skills, but then they're also going to spend, up to typically, and it can be longer, but typically up to about 4 times the finished length to get that audiobook recorded. And that amount of time, that range, is going to vary depending on many things, including their general efficiency in the recording process, their preparation time, which can be considerable, and then also other things like, does your audiobook have a lot of complex words that they need to double check on the pronunciation of? Does it have many names that they need to check on pronunciation of? Are there made-up words that they need to work into their vocabulary so that they come across naturally? Are there accents that are required? So there are a lot of things that can make that recording process actually much slower and take a lot more time. Now, another factor, another thing that you're paying for with your audiobook cost is the studio. Most narrators of audiobooks have their own home studio, which has cost them something to set up, and it involves the proofing of their space such that it has a good sound on the inside, and that it also is ideally blocking out as much external noise as possible. Things like leaf blowers and dogs barking and that old HVAC and the refrigerator hum, things like that. So they've established a place in their home, typically, where they have set up a studio. Not only does it involve that kind of soundproofing, which is an expense unto itself, but also they've invested in the equipment, the microphone, the pop filter, the audio interface, all the different pieces that come into play for that recording process, the headphones, for example. Let's take just a short pause. We'll come right back and we'll talk more about the process and what's needed to develop a professional audiobook.
Frustrated by the royalty rates for your audiobook? Annoyed that when the digital distributors say 70%, they actually mean 70% of 50% or 80% of 70%, neither of which is an actual 70%. Wishing there was a way to earn more from each sale? Pro Audio Voices hears you. Out of our commitment to our author clients, we've created Amplify Audiobooks, a program that provides an actual 65% royalties of the sales price you set, that gives you access to your customers' names and emails so you can reconnect with them and build your community and following, and keeps you in the driver's seat. Create coupon codes or schedule a sale with promotional pricing. Amplify Audiobooks gives you the tools to effectively market your audiobooks and a much higher return on every single purchase. Check it out at proaudiovoices.com or go direct to proaudiovoices.app. And for listeners, visit amplifyaudiobooks.com to find your next great listen. The Amplify Audiobooks app is now available on both app stores.
There is also training and learning to use what we call a DAW, the Digital Audio Workstation, what you might think of as the recording software. That takes a significant learning curve usually, and so that is also time that they have spent and invested in their skills development so that they're ready to produce a quality professional audiobook. Now we've moved on from the narrator realm with their personal time and skills and studio to the engineering. Once an audiobook has been recorded, then it needs to be engineered. In other words, an audio engineer needs to listen to that audiobook and make sure that it's high quality. They're listening for many things. They're listening for the audio quality itself. They're listening for mispronunciations, inconsistencies from one character to another, for example. External noises, maybe that dog bark that got through, in spite of the booth. Things like that, or maybe a mouth noise or a rustle of clothing. All of these things need to be taken care of, as well as mastering the audio so that it has a consistent set of levels and it has a consistent overall sound. They need to be able to master it to the technical specifications that are required by the digital distributors, the audiobook retailers. So all of that engineering can take another up to about 4 times what the finished length of the audiobook is. Keep in mind, these are very technical skills. These are skills that someone has had to train on, to work with and develop over time. So they've put a lot of time, they put money into the process of developing the skills so that they're ready to work on projects like yours. The next level, once the audiobook is complete, recording and engineering, now we have those audio files. Then the next level is someone who is skilled in the submissions process. Now, this process itself is not as challenging. It doesn't require quite as many technical skills, but it does require an understanding of how the process works so that you can get through it without a glitch, and you can also get through it so that at the end you have things like proper labeling of your files so that when they show up in the app where the listener is listening, that they aren't a mess and confusing. So this is some of what a submissions manager would be looking at. Another area that they can be really helpful with is understanding what are the best platforms for your success. Where does your audiobook get submitted to or through so that you can reach the broadest audience and have the most tools available to you so that you can succeed with your audiobook? So these are some of the components of a successful audiobook process to create a professional audiobook. And while it might seem like, if you're thinking, oh, it's just someone sitting in front of a mic and reading, well, anybody could do that. It's much, much more than that and takes a tremendous amount of time, money, energy, and understanding about what the process is. It's exciting, it's really a dynamic, and can be a very collaborative process. And certainly hearing your audiobook come to life is so exciting for most authors. So I want to encourage you in the process and also make sure that you're going into it with realistic understanding of what it takes to create a professional audiobook. Thanks so much for listening. If we can be of further help, we are available at proaudiovoices.com. Thanks again. Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.